Welcome to the Homeschool Together podcast. Where one working mom and a stay-at-home dad help you navigate the nuts and bolts of the growing and dynamic world of homeschooling.
With a focus on early learners, like me.
All the ins and outs of building and maintaining your homeschool life.
Homeschool.
Find out tips and tricks to make things like this easier.
I'm reading.
And ultimately, enjoy educating your kids. And what's that last thing?
Have fun together. Did I do good, Daddy?
Yeah, you did, sweetie. Good job. Hello and welcome to Homeschool Together. Thanks so much for joining us. As always, we will have all the links in the show notes below. If you are thinking about a way to support the podcast, you can do it one of two ways. Head on over to Gumroad. If you're going around the world, we have a resource guides there available for you guys to pick up, as well as leaving us a review on iTunes. That would be wonderful.
Wonderful. I think we're at like 58, and we were just talking about how much we would love to be at 100 reviews.
Oh my gosh.
We know there's so many of you that listen, and we very rarely get a review. You don't know how happy it makes us when we get one. We read it to each other. We smile. We get all the feels.
She subscribes to a thing that lets us know when things come in, like new reviews and stuff like that. And we're always
makes us feel so good.
We crowd together. We pour some hot chocolate. We turn on the fire, and we read the reviews to each other at night, and that's what brings us joy.
So yes, please, consider taking a couple minutes to support the podcast. We appreciate it.
Yes, our sob story. Get it over with, Ariel. We're on to hybrid schooling today. That's the title of the game of the podcast. This was a request by Jenny. A little while ago to Ariel. All communication goes through Ariel.
Back in June. But Jenny, we were listening. We have been thinking about this. And really one of the reasons that we wanted to wait on this, the whole concept that her email was about was like, how do you juggle doing your curriculum at home when you have classes outside the home? Mm-hmm. So this could be you're got a parent partnership like us, or you're in a co-op, or you've got a meetup, or you're just taking individual enrichment classes, so how do you balance that? And one of the reasons I wanted to wait a little bit on this was because we just started the new year of our parent partnership that takes us outside the house a couple of days a week to take a number of enrichment classes. And I thought it will really be most relevant for us to be able to be current in that with our personal struggles with it, so that we could think about, what advice would we give and how would we formulate, this idea of balance and priorities and things. Yeah. So I think now is a good time. We're a month into our schooling for the fall, and it's very current for us. This is a very hot topic.
It's very acute to us as well.
That's right.
We do have our enrichment classes, but we also have sports. We had multiple sports going on at one time. We have games at the end of the week. The little one has her own activities. We were definitely feeling this pain and the pressure and everything. So this is a really good topic for us to talk about now, because this is something we have been dealing with ourselves right now. So let's talk a little bit about the challenge of hybrid schooling. What are these various aspects, that people can run into?
I mean, basically, you have these educational goals for your kids, whether those are, milestones that you've set, you purchased a curriculum you're trying to get through, you have an educational plan that you filed with your state or other person, so you've got some stuff that you've got to move through, and yet you have all of these other classes that take up a lot of your time.
It does.
And you don't want your kids to miss out on other educational opportunities outside your home. If it's the right fit, it's fulfilling for your kid, and it helps you meet some of your educational goals too. But then it just takes up so much time; it eats into your homeschool. So I think the real challenge is how do we find balance? How do we still meet our own goals while supporting our kids in outside the home educational opportunities that they may want to take advantage of?
Something that I've realized actually in the last 2 years of more intensive homeschooling that we've been doing is, the learner really has, when the fact that we go one-on-one most of the time when we're doing education, sometimes it's with the 3-year-old as well, but, most of the time it's one-on-one with my daughter. She only has so many cycles of one-on-one education, because it is very intense.
It is.
It's not like sitting in a classroom listening to a teacher talk about one super small, narrow concept for 40 minutes or 50 minutes or, a couple hours, or they're doing work at a table and rotating around. we can get a lot accomplished in a very small amount of time. And, you know, I've realized in the last 2 years, my daughter, while we do accomplish a lot in a very narrow amount of time, she doesn't have a lot of cycles beyond that because it's very intensive and it can really not burn her out, but get her really tired, like mentally.
Yeah. I think
You know,
we
you
ask
just don't
more
have-
of our kids
yeah,
when we work one-on-one.
Exactly. We just don't have the freedom to, you know, say, okay, we're going to homeschool for 4 hours today for a 7-year-old. You know, you can really see it grind on them. You know, if you go any longer than, you know, if we go longer than an hour and a half in one sitting, you know, a couple breaks here and there, and we're doing different subjects and different things. But, you know, if I go too long, I start to see her, you know, drifting and not paying attention. And that's really,
It's just too much.
It's just too much. Right. And when you think about that, you go, wow, if I'm doing all these other things, whatever they are, on top of this stuff I've got to accomplish over here, I really feel like I can burn out this kid or be almost too much. And so I really do feel that acute challenge, you know, when you have so many things.
And how do you juggle getting your stuff done at home? I think there's a lot of positives to taking educational classes outside the home. Obviously, it's great for social.
Yep.
You know, there's skills that, you know, skills and education that maybe you can't provide, right? You know, our daughter takes classes in clay sculpture. Mm-hmm. And while I could try to, you know, put something together, that's not, you know, she takes classes in Irish step dancing. Yeah. I got nothing, right?
I got nothing,
so, you know,
I got nothing for you.
This is enriching for her. It's something that I can't teach. You know, also when you take classes outside the home, they have facilities we don't have, right? Her clay sculpture teacher has a kiln. Yeah. That's, you know, I mean, we could invest in a small home kiln, I guess, but you know, these are facilities and skills.
It's even more than
and
that.
Knowledge we don't have.
Tack on drive time, you know, because a lot of, you know, we're very fortunate that the parent partnership is fairly close to our house, you know, 10 minutes away, right? Mm-hmm. You know, some people are driving 20, 30 minutes, and that's another hour of chewed up time.
Well,
you know?
right. So, I mean, but I'm talking about these are the pros. These are the positives, right? Yeah. And I think that's a great segue into cons, right? So, yes, it could be time it eats out of your schedule to get there. Obviously, the time to take the classes.
Oh, absolutely.
It can make you feel rushed. It can be overwhelming to have this busy schedule. It doesn't leave
all that time adds up to chewing up all the time that you could do for homeschooling, right?
Right. That could be your valuable time. The other big one for us, and we've acutely felt this one, is that you could be giving those classes your kids' peak times. Now, everybody knows their own kid and where they have their peak times. For us, our daughter is peak in the morning. That is her best time. If we try to do things in the afternoon, it's just really hit and miss for us. And so it's really hard when our classes get the morning peak time. Yep. But our little one naps in the afternoon. So she can't take classes in the afternoon because we have to be home for that. So we're kind of like, we end up with the tired kid. We don't get the best. We don't get the peak time.
She's
and that happens a lot.
She's a
to people,
trooper, but I definitely, on the days where we're not at the parent partnership, and versus the days we are, I definitely, absolutely 100% see a performance difference. And it's not even just the fact that it's, okay, we're homeschooling in the early morning versus, you know, the nap time end of the day, late in the afternoon. It's the fact that, you know, those days where we're doing in the afternoon where like that's the first time I'm getting her for any type of homeschooling because we'll be there from 9 until noon. And then after noon, I got to get lunch, they play, we go for a walk, come back, put the kid down, and I'm starting a little bit of math and reading. At that point, my she's been up since 7 a.m. It's 2:00 in the afternoon. It's 7 hours. She's had a huge stimulating morning.
Right.
She's fat and happy with food, you know, from lunch. She's been playing and walking, and now she's got to sit down and listen to this guy.
Right.
Try to teach her how to do math or
and
reading,
that's a sleepy time of afternoon. I don't know. But that's a time when I'm getting tired.
Guys, I'm not lying. If I'm reading books on the couch, Daddy is falling asleep. I have literally, I don't know how I do it. I have fallen asleep reading to my daughter where I started like,
well, now what message does that send to? It's like,
and my daughter's like she's pushing on me, Daddy, you're falling asleep. I'm like, oh God, I'm so sorry, sweetie. Let's move this to the kitchen table because Daddy's falling asleep on this couch.
This couch is too comfortable. But I think it's hard, right? They get the school can not only get their peak time, but it can also use up their energy. And
you as the educator, like for example, I'm falling asleep, right? I'm running them around. I'm up early. I'm doing all this stuff, and maybe I'm not even getting my A game.
Yeah, maybe it's not your peak too. I think that's really important. And the other thing is, you know, these classes that you take at whatever facility they're at, being taught by presumably some sort of professional in their field, whatever it is. I mean, I feel like sometimes our homeschool can pale in a little
Listen-
pale in comparison a little bit.
Listen, clay sculpture ain't got nothing on my Play-Doh skills.
You know what I'm saying, though? I feel like sometimes when they come home, they're like, oh, homeschool. Like, that's right. It's a workbook.
great.
Whereas they just came from a super stimulating environment where she's learning all about, animals and zoology. And she came from a classroom that had posters everywhere. It was super stimulating. And they watched videos and they played games with
They're
groups
running
of
around.
kids.
They're going on little walkabouts in the, around the campus and doing things. I mean, I don't
Pretending to be different animals.
Yeah.
And I mean, like,
I can bring energy, but I got that level.
and I'm
of
not
energy.
saying that I'm not saying that our daughter doesn't feel that our homeschool is good enough, but I think we acutely can feel sometimes like maybe this is not as exciting. And honestly, we have to teach the tough subjects, right? These enrichment classes are all fun things that she's getting to do. They're enriching, certainly, obviously, but they're fun. And then we're coming back and like, hey, let's do math and reading. And she's kind of like, ugh. And so I think that one of the cons about having classes outside the home is it can make the things you have to do at home feel maybe a little bit more arduous than they would if it was just like, hey, this is our homeschool and we're going to do some math and then we're going to do art and then later we're going to do reading, and you could kind of mix it up and it could all be just kind of, fluid in your home. Instead, it's like, oh, we leave the house for fun stuff and we come home for math.
Yeah,
and there's that feeling that's there.
I do have this acute feeling of feeling like the classes steal from me.
Yeah.
Like, I've got to accomplish things. I got to get her to do math. I got to get her to do reading. And yes, I want her in these classes because they're fun and they're enjoyable and it gives her a very diverse experience and she meets other kids and it's very socially enriching.
It's great.
She has kind of a quasi school experience without the homework or the, the pressure or any of that stuff.
Yeah. We get total freedom to choose what we want her to be in.
And there's
great.
enormous amount of classes she can take and we love it. Right. But I do feel like there's a tension because I'm the educator. I'm like, I'm losing time because of this, right?
Right. And we have a maximum class allotment, and we both years we have used up our maximum allotment. And there's something to be said for like, maybe we can see why some of those parents are like, I'm not using all the classes that I could take.
Yeah.
Even though I could take them and they're free.
But also
with the public
strategically
school.
placing those classes, like if you have these classes and they spread across like 4 days, right?
Right.
And they could eat into a lot of time. You could feel like you're always going out.
Well,
you're always doing
that's
something.
the way we feel, right? We're there at the school 4 days a week. And unfortunately, it was supposed to be like 2.
We were trying to get it to 2 with like 1 extra class some other time. And, 2 full days, that's fine. I can easily adopt.
Full is 9 to noon. They're
9
not
to
that
noon,
at all.
not full day. But like, I can do a lot of education on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then do a little bit on Tuesday, Thursday. And I can get everything done doing that. But once all of a sudden you go, I got a class on Wednesday and there's one on Friday. And then
we had a couple of things that we could not get any other time. And they were critical classes. They were at the top of the list. And so we had to.
It can feel like it breaks up your day in a detrimental way.
Yeah,
sometimes.
it can be a little challenging. We found some ways to work around it. One of the classes is in the afternoon, and my work schedule allows me to be able to take her. It's on a remote day, and I can take her to one class, so that's helpful. And we're finding ways to juggle it.
We're strategizing.
But I guess what we're saying by this is that there's positives and negatives to taking classes outside the home, and we feel this so acutely right now.
Mm-hmm.
I still, we've asked ourselves, we talked about, we feel this is very worth it. Our daughter is getting opportunities for social time, for art skills.
The social experience beyond anything is really why it's most important for us. Yeah.
She's making great friendships.
And she's getting exposed to things that I would not be able to do with her. Like obviously the dance, the dance is one thing. The art classes she's taking a nice science class, but the thing like the sewing class, I couldn't do that.
Right.
It's just not my flow. And you would have to do it in your time when you came home,
which is minimal
right now. And, you're doing things outside the home and, we're doing the podcast and we're doing, you're doing the play stuff and we have a lot going on.
Yeah, we have a lot happening.
A lot happening right now. And then you start stacking sports on top of that. And you're just like, oh my God, the day is vaporized.
We are going to have a whole episode about overscheduled homeschoolers coming up here soon, because this is something that we really do feel, and we've had to make some some tough decisions about what we're going to do now that our daughter is a little bit older. There's a lot of the world is open of activities and things that we could do. And so we are going to be talking about that. But
this is good. It's a good segue into
right.
the idea of finding the balance. So if you're doing this kind of hybrid type of schooling where you're doing some classes outside, whatever they might be, a huge smattering of classes, and you're also doing your education at home, math, reading, you're doing your base level curriculum with your literature and everything. How do you find that balance? What are those first few things that we can, tell people to think about?
Yeah. So I think for us, we've talked a lot about this, and really not giving our homeschool the short end of the stick.
That's what we're doing, right? You can't say like, I'm going to let that fall on the floor.
Right. So we decided right up front this year that we were not going to let our classes overpower our homeschool. And so we decided in the class, specifically in the classes that we were going to take, that we wanted to take classes that would have no home component.
Yeah.
There was
some of them do have that.
Right. And we specifically chose mostly a slate of less rigorous classes so that we could kind of she could paint and enjoy painting and then come home, and there would not be any further work that would make the classes would not then leach into our home time. So that was really a very important strategic decision we made. There was a couple of classes she wanted to take as well that we decided to group them so that they were a little bit easier for us to attend. And then, like I said, we made the decision to choose some classes that we knew were going to be less intensive on purpose. Yeah. So we also disenrolled her from dance, which was a different enrichment class because she was taking it at the school. So we did scale back a little bit. And
gymnastics, we were able to consolidate. And
and gymnastics.
Going into the idea of consolidation is strategically planning your enrichment stuff so it doesn't interfere with your homeschool.
Well, right. And then maybe it even complements your homeschool.
Yeah.
So
like we're doing a lot of art stuff right now, so we don't have to do as much of that at the home.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was a great way for us to be like, hey, if we do art at school, then we can take some art off of our shoulders. That was something we would have to do at home.
And also, even though we're doing the prehistory curriculum right now as kind of our literature curriculum,
and there's a lot of science.
And there's a lot of science in that. There's a lot of science. We're also taking a science class at the
we felt like our science was a little bit weak. We don't have a specific science curriculum. And so that was a great way for us to complement our homeschool. I think it's really important that we don't double dip. If there's something like, for example, we're taking art at school. So it's not that we don't do art in the home, because we do.
I do it all the time.
And our little one loves art, but we don't feel pressure to do like an art project every week. It's more free form. Like, hey, girls, do you want to do some sketching?
Like today, they were like, "Hey, Daddy, can I get some paint?" Like, my oldest is doing making her own book right now,
right?
And she's illustrating her own book, and we were cutting out the hole punches, and we were using string to sew a binding, and it was just really fun. But it's all free form. That was her idea, and I'm just facilitating.
Hey,
it.
Here's some crayons or here's some paints. Yeah, so there's still plenty of art going on. If you've heard our episode on art caddies, we do a lot of art, but we didn't feel the need when it comes to like curriculum things, like, are we going to do a whole bunch of art? No. We don't feel that pull because we know that we have the curriculum. So, make sure that you choose classes that are going to be enriching, that aren't going to double dip with stuff you're already doing at home, and that complement your curriculum. Yeah. I think is a really great way to go.
So going from selecting the classes and kind of picking the ones that are complementary and where they fall so that you have a reasonable schedule. Also knowing that you don't have to take all the classes.
Right. Yeah. It's so hard because we want to do all the things.
And we always feel there's always that
fear of missing out.
There's always the FOMO. Go back and read. I'll link it in the show notes, the FOMO episode that we do. I feel it all the time. I feel like if she doesn't get the sewing class now, she'll never realize her sewing potential,
Well, and there are days too, we decide strategically that we are going to skip a class. And this is something that we're allowed to do. You'll know your own
rules. Yeah.
Your own rules. I think it's really important to understand how flexible your outside educational opportunities are. For us, it's incredibly flexible. Yep. We can miss a day without having to explain because we didn't pay for it. We don't feel bad. But if you're going to a meetup or a co-op or some other enrichment classes, it's good to understand how flexible they are, because there are days when we decide like, hey, we've had a busy week. You guys were at grandma's a couple of days. We haven't got much homeschool done. You know what? This week we're skipping this class.
Yeah.
And we're going to stay home and we're going to prioritize homeschool. And we make that decision.
Yeah.
that infrequently.
Or I have some catch up time. Like this weekend, I did a little bit of catch up time because we had a very chaotic week last week, extremely chaotic, and I really lost out a lot of time in the homeschool. And I was like, I got to make up this. So we did a math test on Saturday. She didn't even know. I was just like, hey, I need to borrow you for 15 minutes. We got to go do our math assessment test for the Right Start Math. And then on Sunday, I read her a bunch of books on the prehistory thing, and we kind of got caught up, and I did like a science project. You know, one of the projects that was suggested in the curriculum. We will strategically pick times to say, okay, we just can't do this week, guys. We got to catch up.
Right. And you're right. Sometimes that catch up is on the weekends, and sometimes it is saying, we're not going to go to class this morning because we really need to finish this.
Like tonight, I had my oldest read the story that we were reading in All About Reading tonight to the youngest, and then I had her finish it, reading it to me. That is something that
as a bedtime story.
It's a bedtime story, and that's something that I do on a regular basis with, during the week when we hit the short story lesson in All About Reading. I have her read it a couple times. I like to have her read it like 2 or 3 times. And we just read it today as part of our, part of the regular curriculum. And I got an extra time tonight in because I think tomorrow is going to be very busy. And I don't think I'm going to get to the time to have her do it. So I was able to get it in tonight.
Right. I think that this is important to say, which is that you may need to be creative.
Yeah.
I think what you're describing is how you are creatively finding ways. Hey, it's a Saturday morning. Let's go ahead and just bang out a math test. Or, hey, it's reading to sister at bedtime. Maybe we just read that story again. Yeah. You're finding creative ways to get to accomplish your goals. And I think if you have a busy schedule outside the home, you might have to be creative with how you can accomplish things. Mm-hmm. I think the other thing is not to overload your work. Yeah. So you have this curriculum. Let's say you're doing Build Your Library or something. Hey, it's a 36-week curriculum. That might not be a 36-week curriculum for you. If you're only doing it 2 days a week, maybe that's a 50-week curriculum. Well, it just takes extra time.
We've talked with a number of parents. A lot of people here are listening. They're doing the Around the World journey right now. And they're going to get into those first few weeks. They're going to have a lot of energy and they're going to do it. And all of a sudden, boom, they're going to hit, Venezuela, Brazil week. And it's like right during Thanksgiving. And they're going to realize, oh my God, I just lost a week. It's okay.
Right.
It's okay.
It's really okay. So that, I think this whole grade thing, level thing, right? Yeah. We want to keep on level. And for example, with prehistory, we were just discussing this because you were saying like, oh, I think this is going to take me more than a week. And you were stressing about it. And I was like, because you were like, I only have like these 2 afternoons. I have these other times to work, and I got to get these other lessons done for math and reading.
She's literally mimicking how I sound. I don't have time. I'm doing this thing. This thing.
He gets all panicked, and I was like, things. It's fine. He goes, but then we won't be done in February like we planned. And I was like, okay. He goes, it'll be like April. I go, okay. He goes, but then
I will have failed.
He's like, we won't be starting level 1 of Build Your Library, which is kind of, it's supposed to be first grade, quote unquote, until April. And she'll be almost at the end of her first grade year. And I was like, fine. Okay. Now, there's nobody that we have to report this to, unless you're in a heavily reported state and you've already made a commitment what you're going to do and you got to keep up with that and you can't change it. But like otherwise, nobody's looking over our shoulder, and maybe that curriculum has to take more time. I think the important thing, and I told this to you and you were stressing about prehistory, was that it's about qualitative over quantitative. I don't want you to rush through Precambrian history just because something that I put on a spreadsheet says we're supposed to be through it this week. That like totally does not matter. What matters is that our daughter gets an understanding.
There's a little bit of attention to
a base understanding of what's going on.
Executing to the curriculum and then executing to the plan. And sometimes your learner or life or all your other things that you're doing do not facilitate that level of pacing. And that can cause some stress.
Absolutely. So I think there's a couple ways to go. One, you can relax and go slower.
Yep.
Do it when you can, and that's fine, and deal with the fact that maybe you're not going to be like perfectly on grade level with everything, and it's cool. Or
you always got the summer.
You have the summer, you have weekends, right? You can be strategic and use different time. The other thing is, and if you're an all year-round homeschoolers like we are, that's makes that life nice. That's a good plug for that.
Yep.
The other thing is you can also decide that maybe you're not going to do everything that is written in the curriculum. Really look at it and say, hey, this week the subject of the curriculum is this, and these are all the activities they have. I think my learner would get the most enrichment out of these pieces.
Yeah.
and leave the rest behind. I think when we pay for things, right? Pay for the curriculum and we want to do it all.
Yeah,
we want to get all the books. I know.
Or you bought the books and you're like, well, if I leave that on the cutting floor, that book is on the cutting floor.
Right. And I bought that book, right? So I feel a lot of stress.
Sunk costs.
Right.
Yeah.
Earlier today, you were telling me like, oh, this one fossil book, this isn't very good. And I was like, oh, we already had it. So I put it in there. And you're like, yeah, it's not very good. I said, okay, that's cool. I'll pull it from the rest of the curriculum. Let's put it in the Goodwill box. And you were like, oh, no. If we already own it, like, oh no, I'll keep going with it. And I was like, no, why would you do that? You don't have that much time.
Yeah.
You don't think it's a good book. I think we can show it to people on a YouTube video and say, hey, don't get this book because this isn't a good one for prehistory. And then let's chuck it in the Goodwill box and move on with our lives.
It's one of those things where we're doing a curriculum that is somewhat a little elevated. And that book is meant for an older kid.
Yeah, but you also, but I said, oh, is that one we could recommend for older kids? And you're like,
no,
dry. It's really dry. It's not very good. I'm like, great, let's ditch it. But you were like, but we already own it. And I'm like, I don't care. If it's no good, we'll ditch it. We can tell people don't buy this one and then we'll ditch it. Yeah. And I think it's important for us to not be so hard on ourselves with what we've already spent money on and what the curriculum says. We have to follow it. No one is judging us on this stuff. It's okay. If you've got 2 days a week and you want to do an around the world study, or you're studying ancient civilizations and 2 days a week is what you've got, then use your 2 days and cover the areas that you think are important or are interesting to you and your kid, or take 2 weeks to do 1 week's worth. And I think it's really fine. And I think being creative, finding, time to do things, and then being realistic and give yourself a little bit of grace, because it's not easy to do this and nobody's judging you. And I know the first couple of weeks you were super stressed about it. And I was, and I think because I planned it, you were like, I'm not keeping up. And I'm like, I'm not judging you. It's really fine.
Prioritizing, strategically cutting, whether it's the class or part of the curriculum that just isn't working or isn't firing at 100% or doesn't give you the fulfillment that you are looking for in your experience. There's no reason to drag down your whole homeschool for that. I agree with you on that.
No, I don't think you need to sink the whole thing. Hey, tonight at dinner, our daughter was telling me all about paleo bugs and how big they were and how cool they were.
There are bugs bigger than daddy.
Yeah, that was the thing. They're bugs bigger and they look like this and they have spikes on their head and she was all about it. And I was like, great, this is all I want. This is all I want. I want my first grader to be so excited about what we're doing that she's geeking out on it and telling me about it at dinner.
Geeking out on Cambrian animals that were living in the sea.
Right, I'm perfectly happy. And I think we're meeting our goals when our kids are learning and enjoying that learning. And we shouldn't be so hard on ourselves.
Well, then I'm doing a great job.
You're doing a great job.
One other aspect with the hybrid schooling that can also cause a lot of tension that I feel as well is that, the fulfillment of the educator is something that we kind of forget about a lot of times.
Yeah.
And,
we kind of do this for us too.
I know. And we forget that, we also have goals and hopes and hobbies and everything that we want to do that gives us fulfillment and meaning. For example, I like to write, I like to work out. I like to be quiet because I'm a guy and, a lone wolf I'm a lone wolf.
Oh, we got back from Great Wolf Lodge last week. You're practicing your howling.
Yes, I'm practicing my howling. But I like to have some time to myself. I like to listen to my podcasts. I like to listen to audiobooks and things like that. If I don't get those type of time, that time for myself, because I have my own goals, like whether it's working out or reading or writing, getting my words in, things like that, I start to get tense and angry and frustrated and stuff like that. And we know everybody out there has their own goals, whatever they might be. You want to do knitting, you want to do gardening, you want to do whatever you're going to do. You have your own responsibilities that you're trying to do. Having a very full schedule with the homeschooling can easily put your needs on the cutting room floor, and thinking about what you need to feel fulfilled and happy in doing it. Because a lot of times we're trying to make sure our kids are happy and they want to continue homeschooling, and they don't want to say, daddy and mommy, I'm done. I want to go to school. We want to make sure they're having a great time, and we really care about their education, and we want them to be as fulfilling as possible. Yeah. And sometimes we sacrifice ourselves a little bit in order to make that a reality.
Yeah, we're often the first thing that gets cut.
We are, talking about cutting stuff. It's like we're the first thing that gets cut.
Well, right, and I think
and then
that,
you got to make dinners. You got to keep the house clean. You got to like do all these other things.
yeah,
It's
and
crazy.
If
Shopping.
if you aren't personally fulfilled, you're not doing whatever self care you need.
You're
to
going to
do
get burnt
your
out.
hobbies and stuff. Yeah, you're going to get burnt out, and it's going to affect your homeschool.
Yeah.
I think it's really important, and for you. I think this dovetails in really well with our last main point of this episode, which is planning is key.
Yep.
And so we plan every week, and we have a digital calendar and Google calendars.
It's becoming more and more important to us in our success.
Yeah, we can't. It is the manual of our lives at this point. And we sit and we look at it and we strategically.
It's not that we're planning out every single thing that we're going to do in homeschool.
No.
It's just so that we can see what is coming.
We see the events, we see the activities, we see the nights that dad has writers group and mom has rehearsal for the show that I'm stage managing. And we've got, and the grandma's going to take the kids on this day. And, hey, they have a special Girl Scout event this day and whatever. We have everything planned. Yeah. And we sit down at the beginning of every week and go, okay, how are we going to accomplish our goals for this week? And we really talk about them. And you've recently started like waking up early so you can do your workout in the morning. Or, tonight I said, hey, let's have dinner early and I'm going to take the kids so you can do your workout tonight. Because you didn't get to get up this morning early and do it. We really work together in this partnership to come up with how are we going to get everything done. And you're like, hey, this week I've got to get 2 reading lessons, 2 math lessons, where there's a play date this afternoon. So we're going to move this here. I think it really takes planning. And I hate to say it, if you're listening out there and you're having trouble balancing and you're not a planner and you have a lot going on, I don't really know how you can accomplish this and keep your sanity without a bit of planning, because it's really hard to be freeform if you don't have as much time. We have to be very strategic with how we use our time. We only have so many hours of the day when we can be out of the house because we have the little one napping. I'm working. You're home. We have these outside classes. We have a couple of activities which are very important to our daughter. She plays soccer. We have that. We've got some things going on. We've decided that these are important, but we have also got to get in all of this educating, and we have to make sure that it's not like, hey, I'm going to grab 10 minutes here and do this thing with you. That's so fly by night that she none of it sticks in her brain either. Yeah. And we can't just be like checkboxing the school.
That is such a wonderful,
hard thing to not do.
That's one. Yes, exactly what you're saying. But in saying that, also, there's a lot of learning that can be done that can be checkboxy.
Well, there's some that can be done quickly, but still with quality.
But that's part of the planning. Like, for example, I can read the short story, like we talked about a little bit earlier today. Right. Like I can read that short story at 8:15 in the morning when you've left with the little one,
right,
and we're waiting to go to our first class, and to leave to go to our first class. I've got 25 minutes. Let's sit down, do a couple pages in the Scholastic book, and do time. Do some additional problems, and let's read the short story. I would have had to do that later in the day, but I can fit it in here. It's something that is that she will get. That I know as the educator that she will get the benefit from. But I'm not going to sit there and do like a start math lesson.
Yeah, you're not going to say let's do half a math lesson because we have 15 minutes.
Yeah, like you can pick and choose, like being creative and picking and choosing what you slot in at different times. Anyway, I've been getting these, I have these early reader books that I've been doing. So I'm now stuffing them in my bag on the way to school that I'm going to toss back to her that she can read. And these are very easy kind of book level things for her to just kind of feel like she's, getting a little bit of practice. Normally I would do those in the afternoon. That is definitely something I can do in the car on the ride to school. And I know she'll get the benefit of the experience of reading those things that I don't have to like be sitting over her shoulder, helping her through. It's something that I know she can do. Doing those type of creative breaking up of your curriculums throughout your week has been very helpful. And I can't do that unless I have a good vision of what the week looks like and where I can slot things in. Like today was a really free-form day. We did a lot of homeschooling at the park today. We went for a walk. We had lunch. We did some reading. They got to play. We did a little bit of, nature stuff. And we got to eat lunch and go for a walk. And I was able to stack a little bit of walking. So I got my steps, helping towards my step goal for the day. I got, the little one out. I got the big one out. We were able to play. We were able to get some reading in while the little one played. We were able to do a bunch of stuff together. right? And
Yeah.
I was able to layer those in because I knew today was a free day, didn't have anything planned. Let's go ahead and do a bunch of things together so I can get a lot done. And I was
Yeah.
able to do that. And then I did my reading and math lesson
And I don't
later
think you
in the
can
day.
do that if you don't have a plan for the week of like, hey, this week, this
Absolutely.
is what I need to accomplish. And for those people that do like reverse plan, what they're able to do, I think that that's great, except you might find that you need to audit that every once in a while to make sure that you're keeping a decent pace with what you intended at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
Because if you're busy with outside classes, it really is easy to let homeschool slip because you do feel like, hey, we're on the go quite a bit. Our child's having a really fulfilling experience. I think that this is a challenge, and I don't think that we have all the answers. We're clearly right in the middle of it, but these are techniques that we have found that have been really helpful for us in finding the right balance and making sure that we're still getting the homeschool goals done while not sacrificing stuff that we think is really important for her. Right, she's taking classes that are great for her creative side. They're great for her social. She's doing things that are active and good for her health. So it's all positive. It's just, there is a balance to be struck. And it's going to be a challenge for everyone, but I think really look at the classes you're taking or the activities that you're in. Really, what are they bringing to your child and to your homeschool? Are they enriching? Is there places that you could consolidate? And then look at what you're doing for your homeschool and ask yourself if this is realistic to have these two pieces together. And something has to give. You can't do so much on both sides that you're going to fail at both of them. You have to find the right thing that works for your family. And you may find that some kids love being active and others it's going to be overwhelming even for your child. Our daughter is an extremely social creature. So she thrives on being able to go and do these classes. And I think that if she were, purely at home and not doing these enrichment classes,
It would be a struggle.
it would be to her detriment. She really needs other kids.
And we
more
know
often.
and we know all kids are different. All
all
situations are different. We've interviewed a number of parents on our homeschooling journeys episodes where they'll have one kid who is a social butterfly and then another one who just likes to read all day long. And that is a huge challenge between the two. Being able to make both of those kids have fulfilling relationships and experiences. I'm lucky I have two very social butterflies that they both
Well,
have.
and one is very young, so we'll see how she ends up coming up. But she's very social now.
She's very social.
And one of the things we've seen with other families who go to like our parent partnership, for example, is while one child is in classes, the other child who isn't really into taking the social classes, they're sitting and quietly doing homeschool with them while their sibling is in class. And so I think that's a further layer of struggle, which is, juggling this with multiple kids.
Like on Fridays when I have the little one with me, normally she's at preschool on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We tried to align both kids' schedules so we would have free Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That was a challenge last year. Having the little one with me at the school, having to entertain her. Although I could see where that is a benefit maybe in the future when I'm having to do her own homeschool curriculum, that maybe alternating them, doing her homeschool while she's with me, whatever works best for you. But right now it's best that they're both on the same day so that I don't have a lot. On Fridays, I do some of her preschool with her. We're doing the Blossom and Root Early Years Volume 1, and I do bring that with me on that Friday.
It's a great time.
When I have to bring her to the parent partnership, I do a little bit of stuff there where I'm reading to her. We're doing a little activities, and then she goes and plays for a little bit. And then once her sister's done, we head home,
Yeah.
You have to find that balance. And I think with the hybrid schooling,
you have to be creative, right? It can't, nothing is ever going to be perfect in these perfect blocks. If you're outside
and
the
you're always
home,
adapting, you're always changing. And, in 6 months, we're going to have different problems that we have to adapt to. And, that's
true.
always the case. So there's really
I think we have to stay flexible with
stay
it.
flexible and have a good plan, I think is the best way to kind of navigate through that.
Yeah,
So let's end this the way we're ending it nowadays. We're talking about the books. It is Halloween coming up. It is October, and we are reading Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
It's a kid's
classic version of it. So it is very much an abridged, heavily abridged version. You could imagine a chapter of Frankenstein being normally, say, 20 pages long of regular text, has been truncated down to about 2 or 3 pages and about 14 font. And so you could imagine it being very, very, very easy read. And then having really fun, creative pictures that kind of go along with it, showing the exploits of Dr. Frankenstein as he goes and builds his great Prometheus creature. It is really fun. It's such a great, light, easy read. I've been reading to my daughter slowly.
And there's cute little illustrations
Wonderful
in it too.
little illustrations. I figure I read about, Ariel reads a lot more to our daughter the chapter books than I do. I tend to, at the end of the day, not be interested in reading long form kids chapter books to my daughter. I'm a little burnt at the end of the day, talking a little bit about getting burnt out. I kind of leave that to her, and that's, it's something she enjoys. But this is very much an easy read. I can read about 2 or 3 chapters in about 10 minutes. It's a very light thing. I've been doing it right before bed. Ariel's been out doing her play, and so I've been having to take on some of the duties. And for me, I can kind of see the in my daughter's eyes, not getting the full 45 minutes, 50 different voices that Ariel gives.
Listen, it's a performance.
Her Jim Dale performance for every single book. But
I have a lot of Harry Potter voices, I do have to say.
I do not.
She says I do great voices, which I think is a real compliment because she listens to Jim Dale and he's the man.
I can do a lot of voices. I just ain't got it in me at that time of night.
Well, this is cool. So this Kid Classics version of Frankenstein, she's really enjoyed. They have several books in the same series. We'll link the Frankenstein, but they have Dracula. They also have Hound of the Baskervilles, and they have your personal favorite, Moby Dick.
Ooh.
As Kids Classics versions. I think these are great because they're kind of like great illustrated classics, except the illustrations are in color.
Yeah.
And I think that they're just really engaging. So
does that version have 12 chapters on the nuances of processing whales and whale
I don't
hunting?
know. We can purchase it and find out.
Oh, please do. I want to read that one to her. I read her Moby Dick, the Great Illustrated Classics. Oh God, 2.5 years ago. So it was fun. It was very fun.
Yeah, I think it's really great that they're coming up with these.
I did a reread of it while I was reading it to her, so I could enjoy the chapters as they go. Definitely two different versions of the book. But if they do the same type of heavily abridging, it will be the base level story as you go through it, not the 12 or 13 chapters that Melville put in about the nuances of whaling and whatnot. But yes, 'tis the season for spooky things, and we have been reading her the simplified version of Dr. Frankenstein by the always wonderful Mary Shelley.
Thanks so much for joining us today and making us a part of your homeschool journey. Please engage with us on social media. Join our Homeschool Together podcast group on Facebook and find us at Homeschool Together Podcast on Instagram. We'd love to hear your feedback, questions, and recommendations. Until next time.
Happy homeschooling!